In the 1970s, these artists had everything. Number ones, sold-out tours, Grammy nominations, and voices that made the whole world stop. And then, at the exact moment the spotlight was brightest, they were gone. Welcome to R&B Archive, and today we are counting down 12 R&B stars who dominated the decade and vanished at the peak of their fame. Some taken by tragedy, some broken by the industry, some destroyed by the same success that made them legends, and every single story is more devastating than anything you have heard before.
Lovin You is...
One of them wrote a lullaby for her baby daughter that became a number one in 24 countries and was diagnosed with terminal cancer 9 months later.
No one else can make me feel the color.
One recorded his greatest hit the same day he walked out of a studio in a delusional breakdown and fell from a 15th floor window.
Lean on me when you're not strong.
And one hit number one with a song he wrote as a joke and was dead before the decade ended.
Have a problem that you'll understand.
Number 12, Billy Paul, Me and Mrs. Jones, 1972.
Me and Mrs. Jones.
Billy Paul had been releasing records since 1952.
But it's much too strong.
20 years of recording, of playing jazz clubs in Philadelphia, of being one of the most technically gifted vocalists on the East Coast, and nobody outside of his local circuit knew his name.
We meet every day.
He was 33 years old when Kenny Gamble finally handed him a song that Gamble had kept locked in his own desk drawer for 2 years. Too controversial, too honest, too naked in its portrayal of adultery to be given to anyone less capable of making it feel real.
The same cafe, 6:30.
The vocal on Me and Mrs. Jones was recorded in a single session with MFSB, the Philadelphia International House Band, and required something from Paul that no producer had ever asked of him before. Not technique, not range, not jazz precision, but complete emotional surrender.
Holding hands, making all kinds.
Paul later described the recording as the most uncomfortable he had ever been in a studio. He felt genuinely exposed.
Well, it's time.
That discomfort is what you hear on the record. A man who sounds like he is confessing something he shouldn't be saying, because he was.
Now she'll go her way.
Released in September 1972, Me and Mrs. Jones hit number one on the Billboard Hot 100 on December 16th and stayed there for 3 weeks.
We'll meet the same place, the same time.
It was the best-selling R&B single of all of 1972.
Mrs. Jones.
It won the Grammy for Best Male R&B Vocal Performance at the 1974 ceremony.
We gotta be extra careful.
Billy Paul was suddenly everywhere. Television, radio, the covers of music magazines, a man who had spent 2 decades waiting for one song.
Jones. We gotta.
And then the follow-up failed. Then the one after that. Then the industry moved on to disco, which didn't fit his jazz soul voice at all.
And we're gonna hold hands like we used to. We're gonna talk.
Gamble and Huff produced 3 more albums for Paul through the 1970s, each one commercially softer than the last.
Go now.
By 1980, he had left Philadelphia International entirely. The man who waited 20 years for one song got it, and watched the world move on in 18 months.
So much inside.
Billy Paul continued performing on the oldies circuit until his death in April 2016. He never made another record that came close.
We'll meet the same place, the same time.
Number 11, Labelle, Lady Marmalade, 1974. Patti LaBelle, Sarah Dash, and Nona Hendrix had been together since 1962. 12 years of lineup changes, label switches, management disasters, and sound reinventions, from girl group sweetness to rock soul ambition to Afrofuturist glam, before they walked into a studio in New Orleans in 1974, wearing silver spacesuits, and recorded one of the most provocative number ones in the history of soul music. Lady Marmalade was written by Bob Crewe and Kenny Nolan and handed to the group by producer Alan Toussaint, who had insisted on recording it in New Orleans rather than New York. Toussaint's production gave the track a layered complexity that a standard session couldn't have achieved. The rhythms, the interplay between the instruments, the way the groove breathed were all distinctly Southern. Patti LaBelle had initially been uncertain about the lyric, which centered on a French-speaking sex worker in New Orleans. Toussaint told her, "Trust the song." She did. It hit number one on the Billboard Hot 100 in March 1975. For several weeks, it was the only record in the top 10 recorded entirely by black women. Labelle performed it at the Metropolitan Opera House in New York, the first black popular music act ever to play that stage, dressed in silver and feathers, performing to an audience that had never seen anything like them. And then they broke up. In October 1976, 2 years after Lady Marmalade, and at the height of their combined fame, Labelle announced the split, with no warning, no farewell tour, no final album. The reasons were internal, creative and personal tensions that had been building for years, and that success had sharpened rather than softened. Each member went solo. Nona Hendrix made interesting, overlooked art records. Sarah Dash released quiet, underappreciated albums. Patti LaBelle eventually became a solo star in the 1980s, but LaBelle, the group, never made another record. The most visionary black female group of the 1970s disappeared at the exact moment they should have been headlining the world. Number 10, Eddie Kendricks, Keep On Truckin', 1973. He had walked out on the Temptations mid-tour in the middle of a run at the Copacabana nightclub in New York. Between sets, after years of being treated as secondary to David Ruffin and then Dennis Edwards, he simply decided he was done. His former group released a record called Superstar, Remember How You Got Where You Are, widely understood as a direct public taunt aimed at Kendricks, while his first two solo years produced not a single top 40 hit. Keep On Truckin' changed everything. Built on a clavinet groove that anticipated the proto-disco sound of mid-70s soul, the song was co-written by Leonard Caston Jr., Anita Puri, and producer Frank Wilson. But what people don't know is that Kendricks embedded a line in the lyric directly aimed at his former group. In Old Temptations' Rain I'm Duckin', a public response, hidden in a dance record, to the men who had mocked him on their own single. He fired back. In a number one record heard by millions. Released in August 1973, it hit number one on both the Billboard Hot 100 and the R&B chart simultaneously, selling an estimated 3 million copies. For 2 years, Kendricks was untouchable. Back-to-back hits, constant touring, a solo career that silenced every critic who said he'd never match his Temptations' work. Then the hits stopped coming. The follow-ups charted lower and lower. By the end of the 1970s, he had rejoined the Temptations, the group he had publicly walked out on, simply because he needed the work. In 1989, Eddie Kendricks was diagnosed with lung cancer. Both lungs were removed. He continued performing. He died in October 1992 at the age of 52. The Temptations, who had taunted him, attended the funeral. The man who answered them with a 3 million selling #1 never saw a penny of the royalties he was owed from his Motown recordings. He had signed those rights away decades before, when he was still just a kid from Birmingham who wanted to sing. Number 9, Al Green, Let's Stay Together, 1971.
I'm so in love with you.
Al Green had not yet reached the top of the R&B chart when Willie Mitchell took him aside and told him something no producer had ever said to a soul singer: "Stop trying to be Otis Redding. Stop pushing, stop forcing, stop muscling through the notes. Be yourself." Green didn't know what that meant, but over 100 and more recorded vocal takes spread across several days, he found out. Let's Stay Together reached #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in February 1972. It sat at the top of the R&B chart for 9 consecutive weeks. Between 1971 and 1974, Green released 6 consecutive albums that all hit the R&B top 10, a run of sustained creative excellence that no soul artist since Stevie Wonder had achieved. He was the undisputed king of Memphis soul, and the world was his.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Then a woman named Mary Woodson walked into his bathroom in October 1974. Woodson had been pursuing Green romantically, and he had not reciprocated. On the night of October 18th, she entered his home in Memphis while he was in the bath, poured a pot of boiling grits over him, burning him severely, and then shot herself with Green's own gun. Green was rushed to the hospital with second-degree burns covering much of his body. He survived. She did not. The incident, according to Green himself, he interpreted as a sign from God. Within 2 years, he had become an ordained minister. He walked away from secular music, purchased a church in Memphis, the Full Gospel Tabernacle, and announced that he would sing only for God. He kept that promise for nearly a decade. The greatest soul voice of the first half of the 1970s went silent, not from failure, not from label disputes, not from commercial decline, but because a violent tragedy in his own bathroom convinced him that his talent belonged to a higher purpose. He eventually returned to secular music in the 1980s, but the specific genius of those early 70s records, that combination of Green, Mitchell, and the High Records sound, was over. It never came back. Number 8, Marvin Gaye, Got to Give It Up, 1977. Motown told Marvin Gaye he needed to record a disco song. He hated disco. He described it publicly as music that lacked substance, a genre he considered shallow and commercially calculated. He was also in the middle of a brutal divorce, facing accusations of unpaid child support, and had been taken on a lengthy European tour by a promoter who booked it specifically to help him escape debt. Gaye was broke, bitter, and furious at disco, at Motown, at his marriage, at everything. So he did what only Marvin Gaye could do. He wrote a parody of disco, a 12-minute track he originally titled Dancing Lady, as a direct response to Johnny Taylor's hit Disco Lady. He brought his brother Frankie in, his girlfriend Janice Hunter, Frank Beverly of Maze on percussion, and recorded the whole thing at his own studio, Marvin's Room, in 4 days in December 1976. He played keyboards himself. He sang lead and background. The song he made to mock a genre became one of the most joyful records of his life. Released in March 1977, Got to Give It Up hit number 1 on the Hot 100, the R&B chart, and the dance chart simultaneously. Gaye's first number 1 since Let's Get It On in 1973. It replaced Fleetwood Mac's Dreams at the top of the pop chart. It became one of the most widely sampled records of the following 2 decades. After 1977, Gaye released Here My Dear, a deeply personal, commercially ruinous double album, and then exile followed. Belgium, London, financial collapse, addiction, and a comeback so extraordinary it seemed like a resurrection. Then on April 1st, 1984, one day before his 45th birthday, his father shot and killed him during a physical altercation at the family home in Los Angeles. The coroner found cocaine and PCP in his system. A man who had given the world some of the most beautiful music of the 20th century died in his parents' house at the hands of his own father the day before his birthday. The song he made as a joke, to mock a genre he despised, became the most played record of his final chart peak. Robin Thicke's estate paid his children $7.3 million in 2015 for stealing it. Number 7, Minnie Riperton, Lovin You, 1975.
Loving you.
The song was a lullaby.
La, la, la. Do, do, do.
Minnie Riperton and her husband Richard Rudolph had written it years before it was ever recorded. A soft, barely there melody they sang to their baby daughter Maya to distract her so that her parents could have a few quiet minutes together.
Has made my life so beautiful.
Near the end of the recording, you can hear Riperton's voice calling the name Maya, 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 the baby in question, who would grow up to become actress and comedian Maya Rudolph.
Every time that we
A mother singing her daughter's name into the most intimate moment of her career. Stevie Wonder produced the Perfect Angel album without taking a credit.
make me feel the colors that you
The Epic Records label listed the arrangement as Wonder Love, Wonder's backing ensemble, to obscure his personal involvement.
live each day in springtime. 'Cause
He produced it for free
and every day of my life,
because he believed in Riperton and refused to let her disappear into commercial obscurity.
I see your soul come.
He had personally recommended her to the label.
Maya, Maya, Maya.
The album had sold modestly until the fourth single, Lovin You, began its climb. Released as a single at the start of 1975, it hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 on April 5th and simultaneously topped the charts in 24 countries. Riperton became internationally famous overnight, known as the lady with the high voice and flowers in her hair.
And baby, loving you.
She had a 5-octave vocal range, could access the whistle register effortlessly, and possessed a musicality that had been developed since her childhood on Chicago's South Side.
Shining through. And every time that
9 months after Lovin' You went to #1, Riperton was diagnosed with breast cancer. By the time doctors found it, it had already spread to her lymph nodes.
la 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 la.
They gave her 6 months to live.
Maya, 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 Maya.
She outlived that prognosis by 3.5 years, recording 3 more albums, touring, becoming the national spokeswoman for the American Cancer Society, and receiving a Courage Award from President Jimmy Carter at the White House.
Please stay with me.
She died on July 12, 1979, at 31 years old, in the arms of her husband. Stevie Wonder was nearby, on a tape recorder, his voice playing in the room.
No,
The lullaby she wrote for her daughter became a message she left for the world.
beautiful. And every day of my
Maya Rudolph was 2 years old when it went to #1.
loving you, I see your soul.
She grew up without her mother. Number 6, The Chi-Lites, Oh Girl, 1972. Eugene Record had written and produced every Chi-Lites hit from behind the scenes. The voice, the arrangements, the compositions, all of it. The group had been charting R&B singles since 1964 through lineup changes and label shifts, and by 1971 they had found their peak. Slow-burning, lushly arranged soul ballads that appealed to a crossover audience without losing their Chicago roots. Have You Seen Her hit #3 on the pop chart in 1971. Then came Oh Girl. Oh Girl was written by Record alone, in a style so stripped down it was almost radical, just Record's falsetto, an acoustic guitar, a simple harmonica melody, and almost nothing else. In an era of orchestral Philly soul and dense Motown arrangements, Oh Girl arrived sounding like a man, singing in a kitchen at midnight. Unadorned, unprotected, just the voice and the feeling. It hit number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in May 1972, crossing over from R&B into pop, with a totality that surprised even Record himself. It went gold immediately. The Chi-Lites were suddenly mainstream stars, appearing on television, touring to larger venues, receiving coverage in magazines that had never previously mentioned a Chicago soul group. They performed at the Academy Awards in 1973. Then Eugene Record began his exit. He left the group in 1973 to pursue a solo career, a career that produced 2 respectable albums and no major hits. The Chi-Lites struggled to replace his creative voice, cycling through producers and sounds without finding a consistent direction.
'Cause I don't know where to look for love.
By the end of the 1970s, the group that had charted a number 1 pop single was working bars and club dates. Record eventually returned and the group continued recording through the decades, but the specific combination of his voice, his writing, and the group's Chicago sound that produced Oh Girl was gone from the moment he walked out the door. Some things only happen once. Number 5, Barry White, Can't Get Enough of Your Love, Babe, 1974. 3 years before this song existed, Barry White had never made a record of his own. He was 30 years old, working as an arranger and producer for other people's sessions, when his business partner Larry Nunez convinced him to try a debut single. What followed was one of the most extraordinary commercial runs in the history of soul music. 4 consecutive solo albums, all platinum, all top 10, in less than 3 years. Can't Get Enough of Your Love, Babe was the lead single from his 1974 album Can't Get Enough, and it represented the fully realized version of the sound White had been developing across his first few records, wall-to-wall orchestration arranged by Gene Page, a groove so deliberate and heavy it seemed to move at its own temperature, and White's bass baritone voice so intimate in the mix, it felt like it was coming from inside the room with you. Every time you're here, I feel a change. The album also contained You're the First, the Last, My Everything, which hit number 2 on the pop chart. Both songs charted simultaneously. White was everywhere. Can't Get Enough of Your Love, Babe hit number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in August 1974, his second chart topper in 12 months. He became the first black artist to simultaneously hold the number 1 position on the pop, R&B, and easy listening charts at the same time. In 1974 alone, he was responsible for more than a third of 20th Century Records' total revenue. A label that had signed him because nobody else would, was now dependent on him for its survival. The downfall was slower and quieter than the rise had been loud. Disco eroded his sound. Label disputes fractured his output. A difficult divorce in 1988 drained him financially and emotionally. New label deals produced albums that sold less and less. The orchestral soul sound that had defined him seemed, by the late 1980s, like a relic of another era. He came back briefly in 1994 with a Quincy Jones collaboration, Practice What You Preach, and the world remembered who he was for a moment. In July 2003, Barry White died of kidney failure. He was 58 years old. He had made himself entirely from nothing, no contacts, no family connections, no industry support, and at his peak had been the best-selling soul artist on earth. The orchestra that built him went silent long before he did. Number 4, Donny Hathaway, The Closer I Get to You, 1978. The song had been written as a solo vehicle for Roberta Flack. Composed by James Mtume and Reggie Lucas, two former members of Miles Davis's band who were playing in Flack's touring ensemble. The Closer I Get to You was already recorded as a solo track when Flack's manager, David Franklin, made a suggestion: call Donny. The two had not spoken properly in years. Hathaway's paranoid schizophrenia had pushed him in and out of hospitals, had ended collaborations, had frightened producers and engineers and fellow musicians who didn't understand what they were dealing with. Franklin made the call anyway. Hathaway had been in a creative wilderness for 5 years. After his brilliant live album in 1972, his third studio effort had failed commercially, and the mental illness that had been quietly building through his most productive years became impossible to ignore. Hospitalizations followed. Industry silence followed that. When he finally re-entered the studio in 1977 to record with Flack, he was 31 years old and had spent his late 20s in psychiatric facilities. Yet the voice, that extraordinary, achingly precise instrument, was untouched. The Closer I Get to You spent 2 weeks at number 1 on the Hot Soul Singles chart in 1978 and peaked at number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100. It earned a Grammy nomination for Best Pop Vocal Performance by a Duo or Group. The reunion album sessions were immediately greenlit. Hathaway was in recovery, recording again, celebrated again, and by all external appearances, on the greatest comeback in soul music history. On January 13, 1979, Hathaway and his manager had dinner at Flack's apartment. Earlier that day, he had been in the studio recording a track called You Are My Heaven when he suddenly fled the room, telling people that white men had his brain hooked up to a machine and were stealing his music. The session was abandoned. A few hours after dinner, his body was found on the sidewalk outside the 15th floor of the Essex House Hotel in New York City. The room was locked from the inside. The safety glass had been carefully removed from the window and placed on the bed. His death was ruled a suicide. His family has never accepted that ruling. He was 33 years old. The Grammy ceremony he had been nominated for took place 6 weeks later. His seat was empty. Number 3, Curtis Mayfield, Move On Up, 1970. Curtis Mayfield had been a professional musician since the age of 15.
So what do you want to do?
Through the Impressions, the vocal group he led from 1958, he had written and produced some of the most politically charged soul music of the civil rights era.
Your folks might understand you.
People get ready, keep on pushing. Amen. Songs that were played at marches, at funerals, in churches across the American South.
Then the supreme best.
Then in 1970, he went solo and made music so ambitious, so cinematically sophisticated, that it changed what a soul album was allowed to be.
Into the steeple of beautiful people where there's only one.
Move On Up was recorded for his 1970 debut solo album and rejected by American radio. The full version ran over 8 minutes. The domestic release of the album didn't include the complete track. US listeners received an edited single that barely charted.
With just a little faith, if you put your mind to it, you can surely.
Britain received the full version. The UK and Europe understood what Mayfield had built. A horn section of almost orchestral complexity, a lyric that demanded action rather than mourning, and the song became an underground anthem across the Atlantic, while America largely ignored it.
Take nothing less.
He returned with the Superfly soundtrack in 1972, a project that outgrossed the film it accompanied, knocked The Godfather from the top of Variety's box office charts, and is now preserved in the Library of Congress National Recording Registry as historically significant. Through the mid-1970s, Mayfield remained one of the most vital creative forces in Black American music, political, ambitious, and impossible to categorize. Then on August 13, 1990, a lighting rig at an outdoor concert in Brooklyn fell onto the stage during a storm and struck Mayfield at the base of his skull. He was paralyzed from the neck down instantly. He was 48 years old. He spent the next 9 years quadriplegic, continuing to write music, recording vocals lying flat on his back, because it was the only position that allowed him any breath control. His final album, New World Order, was recorded this way and released in 1996.
With just a little faith, if you put your mind to it, you can.
He died on December 26, 1999. His music, Move On Up, People Get Ready, Superfly, has been sampled in over 1,000 recordings. The man who was paralyzed by a falling light rig kept making music until his body wouldn't let him. That is what it looks like to refuse to vanish.
All we gotta do is.
Number 2, Bill Withers, Lean on Me, 1972. He had never played piano before he bought one. Bill Withers spent most of his adult life making toilet seats for Boeing 747s at an aircraft factory in Los Angeles. He was 32 years old when he released his first record, 33 when Lean on Me went to number 1, a man who had taught himself on a Wurlitzer electric piano he bought with his first music advance, writing a song inspired by the mining town in West Virginia where he had grown up. Sussex Records folded in 1975. The label collapse left Withers without a home at the exact moment Lean on Me and Use Me and Ain't No Sunshine had established him as one of the most respected soul voices in America. He signed with Columbia Records and released several albums that contained genuinely great music. Lovely Day in 1977, Just the Two of Us in 1981, but the consistent chart presence of his Sussex years never fully returned. By the mid-1980s, he had essentially retired. Not walked away publicly, not announced it, not released a farewell album, just stopped. He stopped touring. He stopped recording. He gave very few interviews. He said he didn't miss it, that he had never loved the music industry, only the music, and that he had said what he had to say. In 2015, Lean on Me was inducted into the Library of Congress National Recording Registry. A Club Nouveau dance version hit number 1 in 1987, 14 years after the original, giving Withers a second Grammy as composer without requiring him to leave his house. He gave a rare interview to Rolling Stone in 2015 and said simply, "I'm not tormented about not being involved. To have had the ability to make statements that seem to mean something to people, I'm grateful for that." He died on March 30th, 2020, from heart failure at the age of 81. He had not made a new record in over 3 decades. Lean on Me was played at memorials around the world during the COVID-19 pandemic that killed him, a song written by a man who made toilet seats for a living, about a mining town most people will never visit. He said everything he needed to say, then he went home. Number 1, Teddy Pendergrass, Close the Door, 1978. He had been the drummer. When Teddy Pendergrass first joined Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes in 1969, he sat behind the kit and kept time. Then one night he jumped from behind the drums mid-performance and started singing, completely unannounced, and Harold Melvin immediately moved him to the front microphone. He had been hiding the most devastating soul baritone of his generation behind a drum kit. Nobody knew. By 1978, Pendergrass was the biggest solo male R&B star in America. 5 consecutive platinum albums as a solo artist, a record at the time for any black male performer in history. He was famous for his ladies-only concerts, where men were explicitly not admitted, where women would throw lingerie onto the stage while he sang.
And let me blow your mind.
Close the Door, released in 1978, was the pinnacle of that era, a slow-burning invitation delivered in a baritone so deep and warm and physical that radio program directors debated whether it was appropriate for broadcast. Close the Door hit number 1 on the R&B chart and crossed into the pop top 25.
But I want you.
It became one of the definitive slow jams of the era, a song that required no explanation to any adult who heard it.
Let's get lost in each other.
Pendergrass performed it with an intimacy that was almost theatrical in its restraint. The lower he held his voice, the louder it seemed to become.
Close the door.
He was 30 years old. He was at the absolute summit of his powers. He had the world in front of him. On March 18, 1982, Pendergrass was in a car accident on Lincoln Drive in Philadelphia. His Rolls-Royce left the road and struck 2 trees.
Let me make sweet love.
He was left paralyzed from the chest down. He was 32 years old. He spent months in the hospital and the rehabilitation center, relearning what his body could and couldn't do. He recorded again from a wheelchair and released several albums in the years that followed, even performing at Live Aid in 1985 and receiving one of the longest standing ovations of the entire event. But the physical power of that voice, the full baritone that had filled arenas and sold out women-only concerts across the country, was permanently altered by the damage to his body. Let me rub your back. He never again performed the way he had before March 1982. He died on January 13, 2010. He was 59 years old. The accident that ended the peak of his career happened when he was 32, just 4 years after Close the Door had made him the most desired voice in American soul music. He spent 28 years living with a paralysis that arrived while the applause was still in the air. He kept singing anyway. That is who Teddy Pendergrass was. These are the people who gave you the music of the 1970s. Close the door. Not at a distance, not safely, not from a place of comfort, but from the middle of everything that was happening to them. The greatest R&B decade in history was built by people who were living at the edge of everything they had, and some of them fell.